Good afternoon. My name is Manish Chhabbar. Right now, I'm going to take questions on behalf of the print from all of you on our YouTube live on the very relevant issue of should or could the Modi government have sent CBI Chief Alok Verma on leave, or basically, simply put, could it have divested him of his powers over the agency? Could it have asked him not to play any role in any of the investigations? Does the government have the power to tell him to stay away from his office? Because that is what the last night order of the government tantamounts to. The law in my understanding, does not allow or empower the government to do so, even if there is a recommendation of the Central Vigilance Commission, which under the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, has power of superintendence over the CBI, because CBI, we should remember, is a special police organization. The CVC has the power of superintendence over CBI, but it is very clear that even the CVC, the full CVC, the Chief Vigilance Commissioner and the two commissioners, could not have asked the government or recommended to the government to divest Alok Verma, the CBI chief, of his powers, whatever be the circumstances, unless this happened to be a clear case of gross irregularities in which he had been named. And even in those cases, in that case, the power to do so would have vests in a high-level committee, which incidentally is empowered to make selection of the CBI director. Because do remember, the DSPE Act, which is the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, is a pre-independence act. It allows the central government, which allowed the establishment of the CBI. The CBI was established under this act, but this act was originally, it came into being to check corruption during the Second World War, which was, and do remember, we were under the British at that time, so it was mainly a British act which continues till date, and but there have been a lot of changes after that. So I'll be taking your questions live on this YouTube live. Do send in your questions. We have already received some questions. I'll try and accommodate as many as possible. The first question that we got is from Natasha. She wants to know, is the central government playing favorites? Will a Supreme Court intervention help, or will it just cause more trouble? While the last word on this has to be said, because a probe will certainly be on, there will be a lot of questions. The Supreme Court will have something to say on this very important issue on Friday, when it begins hearing Alok Verma's petition. Do remember, he has gone to Supreme Court challenging the government order. And some activists, transparency activists like Prashant Bhushan and some of the others have also indicated that they are going to go to court against this illegal and arbitrary order, as they are terming it. But before the court decides that, or before the court takes a view on that, my understanding is that the CVC did not have any power to send such a recommendation, because it is the settled law that a person who's been appointed to such a high position like that of the CBI director can only be removed, or can only be recommended to be removed by the appointing authority or the selection authority, which happens to be the high level committee, 3-member committee, headed by the Prime Minister, the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, and the Chief Justice of India, or a senior judge nominated by the Chief Justice of India. it is very, very clear by now. We are told that this committee did not meet yesterday because had it met, then Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, leader of opposition, who's technically not leader of opposition but is leader of the single largest party in opposition in the Lok Sabha, but who does get called to a lot of these meetings. He was not there in attendance. We don't know if the Chief Justice of India was consulted on this issue. But the government has decided that Alok Verma's continuation in the CBI was at least for the time being was untenable. Though the government has said, the government order also says that it's an interim measure, but it all boils down to the fact that the CBI under Mr. Verma was investigating his number two, Rakesh Asthana, who's considered very, very close to Prime Minister Modi and is from the Gujarat cadre. So, and there were serious allegations against Mr. Asthana. So, if any action has been taken against Mr. Alok Verma, people will naturally connect that to the investigation that he had initiated against Rakesh Asthana. So I don't know which way things will proceed from here on, because do remember the matter will be in court on a Friday when the Supreme Court of India will certainly make some observations, and everybody, all eyes will be on the Supreme Court on that day. But to say that has the government played favorites, yes, prima facie it does seem a case where the government has overplayed its hand, and maybe the Supreme Court will have something to say on that. We have a question. Who is to blame for this mess? Prime Minister's love for the Gujarat cadre. It's an interesting thing that you say, because right now, the print wrote about it yesterday. The CBI does have an unusually large number of senior officers in the senior hierarchy from the Gujarat cadre. There are many joint directors, a couple of special directors, and including Mr. Asthana. They are there. Then we are all aware that the Prime Minister's office does have a preponderance of Gujarat cadre IAS officers, both serving and retired in several important posts. So I don't know if it is Prime Minister Modi's love for the Gujarat cadre, but yes, if things have not worked out, if there is a crisis right now on the PM's hands, blame will have to be shared by these very officers, because it is very clear that they did not anticipate things coming to this pass, so as to do remember this has happened for the second time in the last about 2 decades. The last time the CBI chief was removed in like this was in the Supreme Court judgment days when Mr. Vajpayee was there. But things have changed. Now you have a selection panel headed by the Honorable Prime Minister of this country, which selects. So if any action had to be taken against Mr. Verma, and that too on cogent reasons, it should have come, in my opinion, from this committee. Another question is, what is the advice of the CVC and why can't it be made public like the government is saying? The advice of the CVC is slowly and steadily being made public. That is the job of journalists. Ideally, the government should have, it's very strange that the order making another officer, Nageshwar Rao, acting CBI chief, was up, and it was floating around on various social media accounts. It was there on some websites also early in the morning. In fact, late last night, we also had a copy of that. But the order divesting Mr. Alok Verma of the charge has not been made public so far by the government, but we have a copy of that, and it says, I'll read out the relevant part for you, relevant portion, and because this is what the CVC has said. That number one, the government order says it's an interim measure till a formal inquiry is ordered, and the order says this CBI Chief Director Mr. Alok Verma be divested of and shall not exercise any of his functions, powers, duties, and supervisory role in any manner. This is a very, very strong order, and it, while people have been saying that he's been sent on leave, so this technically means he is no longer even the director. Yeah, not technically, I would say this prima facie means he is no longer the director, because if you have somebody else doing his job, if he can't exercise his powers, and not just about the case concerning the case in which Mr. Asthana has been named, and because this order is very clear, his functions, powers, duties, and supervisory role in any manner. So that means for all practical purposes, he's out of the CBI. He might be still going to office tomorrow. You might still see him sitting in his office, but he is a powerless. He's no longer the acting director. Somebody else is the director right now of the CBI. Does the CVC have the power to remove, transfer, or send CBI directors on forced leave? I have already answered that no, the CVC, in my opinion, does not have any such power, because after the Vineet Narayan judgment of 1998, the Supreme Court laid down a very clear rule how the director is to be appointed. And we had the Lokpal Act, which was passed in Parliament in 2013. It was notified in 2014, and under that Act, it is now very clear that the appointment of a CBI director is to be done by a committee headed by the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice of India, and the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha. So the CVC, since it is no longer the appointing authority, it cannot remove him also. It cannot divest him of any powers, because taking away his powers is akin to removal. And also, don't remember that under the, as per the Vineet Narayan judgment, and which is now part of the, portion is part of the Delhi Special Establishment Act, the CBI chief has a fixed 2-year tenure. So, if we go by that, Mr. Alok Verma was to retire in January next year, and by removing him at this stage, I think the government has committed an irregularity, but it is for the courts to eventually have a say on that. What is the Rafale angle emerging here? Was Verma shunted out after he asked for Rafale papers? Any truth to this allegation? Frankly, I don't know, because nobody knows. It's all in the realm of possibilities. What we know for a fact is that 3 people, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, a senior BJP leader and a former union minister, Mr. Arun Shourie, a former union minister and a very respectable journalist, activist, and Mr. Prashant Bhushan, a Supreme Court lawyer who's known for his important public interest litigation. The 3 of them did go and meet the CBI chief in his official capacity and handed over a complaint seeking an independent inquiry into the affair, into the Government of India's actions in buying or deciding to buy the Rafale jets from France, and also involving in that the same vein as an offset. It was part of the decision, these people are alleging, to hand over part of that contract to a company owned by Mr. Anil Ambani of the Reliance. So that complaint is still with Mr. Alok Verma. We don't know what action, if any, he had taken on that. There are rumors which are floating around which say that he had asked for some papers about that, but I have my doubts, because CBI is not a fishing organization. It does not indulge, it seldom indulges in that. We know the credibility of CBI has also taken a huge hit in the last few years, but it has to register a PE before it, and that PE eventually gets transformed into a regular case. But even to seek documents, even to make a preliminary inquiry, that PE has to be there. We don't know as of now if he did, register a PE. Only Mr. Alok Verma can answer that, and maybe in the course of his, when the Supreme Court begins hearing of his complaint, of his petition, he will bring these allegations or these claims before the court, inform the court about, because he has so far in his petition is all about why Mr. Asthana, he wanted to investigate Asthana, and his transfer is linked to Asthana, and why he has been divested of his charge. Another question that we have is what is appropriate for the government to do now to restore the CBI's credibility? I definitely think it's dented now. I totally agree with you, Mohit. I also think it's completely dented, but do remember this has not happened for the first time. The CBI, the Supreme Court did say, use that famous phrase for the CBI, caged parrot, and this was in pre-Modi days. It was when the UPA government was there. The CBI has always been seen as the handmaiden of whichever party is in power. There have been instances where CBI has gone after the political opponents of the party in power. There have been several instances where the CBI, which should have been independent, has not acted independently. It is, there are many words that come to mind about that politicians and the political class has used for the CBI when they were not in power. Even Mr. Modi, when he was not in power, was very critical of the CBI, and he had a lot of things to say about the CBI. But now that he is controlling the CBI, because do remember, the administrative ministry in charge of CBI is DOPT, the Ministry of Personnel, which comes under the Prime Minister himself. So I don't think any political party wants to restore the credibility of the CBI. Every political party wants to use the CBI for its own political games, and this is what this government is doing. This is, I am sure, unless the Supreme Court passes some fresh guidelines to make CBI completely insulated from government interference, this will continue. I don't think there are any short-term things that can be done to restore the CBI's credibility. We have another question. The conviction rate of CBI is pathetic and does not necessitate its existence. Time to disband it. I again totally agree with you. Yes, the CBI's conviction rate is very bad. CBI is this country's premier investigating agency. But when was the last time you saw a big CBI case going to the courts and CBI emerging victorious? 8 or 10% conviction rate, and that too at the trial court level, is something not to be very, very proud of. Compare that to the FBI or other central agencies in the modern world, other countries, and you will see the huge mismatch between expectations and delivery that the CBI is facing. Unfortunately, most of it is due to the fact that CBI is continues to be controlled by the government in power, and very few efforts have been made to take the CBI out of government control. One thing that should have been done but has not been done is to separate the CBI, the investigating wing, from the prosecution wing. Successive governments have talked about it. In fact, Modi government has not even talked about it, but nobody has done that. It should have been done by now, but as I said it is in every political party's interests to ensure that the CBI remains a caged parrot. Another question that we have is, since Chief Justice Deepak Mishra is not there now, the case before Ranjan Gogoi is likely to throw the action back on the government. Is it most likely that all wholesale transfer orders would be restored? I have covered the courts, and I am of the view it does not depend. We should not try and second guess the courts. The Chief Justice of India, the previous one, Justice Mishra, the current one, Justice Ranjan Gogoi, and the future Chief Justices, and all judges of the Supreme Court and our High Courts, and even of the lowest courts of this land, their only job is to uphold the Constitution, listen to cases, hear cases, and decide them on merit, whether a case against somebody is as per law, whether that person has committed or has fallen afoul of the prevailing law, or that whether his rights under the constitution are being denied to him. If that happens, then it will be a win-win all for everybody, including this country, the people of this country. We'll have to wait for Monday to see what action. But having seen the courts, since I have covered courts, what I am sure of is that the judges who get to hear the case of petition filed by Mr. Alok Verma and the other petitions that are likely to come before the court, they will take a deep breath, sit back and decide whatever is in the interest of this agency, because it is, at the end of the day, despite shortcomings, despite everything, it is our country's supposedly the best investigating agency. Let's not forget that every case where people think that the state police is not doing a fair job, the first demand that is made, including in the Supreme Court, is transfer this case to to an independent agency like the CBI. So the faith, people do have some faith in the CBI. So it is for the Supreme Court to now act and react and ensure that the faith of the people in the CBI is restored, that the CBI is given more powers, and the shackles that are controlling it, or that are binding it, they are removed. We have one last question. Don't you see this as a win for Asthana, because the whole team of Alok Verma has been sent on leave and not Asthana's team? Unfortunately, I would have to agree with you. This is not something that one should be very proud of, for the government. But I think in all this, the government is seen as taking the side of Asthana, though Mr. Asthana has also been divested of his powers. But the fact is that there is a criminal complaint against him. There are serious charges against him. The CBI, in which Mr. Asthana was the number 2 officer, has booked him for, among other things, extortion and relevant sections of the Prevention of Corruption Act. So, for the government to send out a signal by divesting Alok Verma of his charge, and also by sending Mr. Asthana on leave or divesting him of his charge, I don't think the two cases are similar. Mr. Asthana was facing very, very serious charges. There are still no case against Mr. Alok Verma, because do remember, the CVC, Mr. Asthana had sent a complaint to the Cabinet Secretariat, which was eventually sent to the CVC in late August, and 3 months later or 2 months later, nothing has happened. No action. 2 months later, no action has been taken on that report. We don't know whether some investigation was ordered by now we are told that there will be an SIT which will look into this. But why did this SIT suddenly, why did somebody suddenly realize there was a need for this SIT 2 days after the CBI began its investigations into Mr. Asthana's cases and his actions? So all this, these leave a lot of questions unanswered, and it is for the Modi government to answer these questions, and eventually it is for the Supreme Court of India to see if there is any parity in the two cases, and whether the government of India and the CVC were within their rights in ordering that Mr. Alok Verma be divested of his charge. This is Manish Chhabbar. You can keep us watching us on our YouTube channel. I am with ThePrint, and I hope to talk to you again.